Hi, Becky from the Body Coaches here. Today, I wanted to talk to you about habits. Now, this is quite an extensive subject, so it will not be covered in one video. But I just wanted to go through how a habit is formed, what a habit is, and how they work. So how our life works around them. I'm going to reference James Clear because I think it's absolutely amazing. And a lot of my inspiration when it comes down to habits do come from him. However, it's not him alone. I read a lot of books. And from those books, I gather a lot of information and it helps me with every single client moving forward. So this is an exclusive for all of you guys, because as I said, this is what I use on my one-to-one coaching. So what is a habit? Now, a habit is something that you repeat enough that it just becomes autopilot. So, for example, brushing your teeth every day, maybe your morning routine, the cup of tea when you get home from work, what you do when you arrive in the office. Everything all becomes a habit. If you do something regularly enough, then clearly it just becomes autopilot. It becomes something that you are so used to doing. So for example, getting up in the morning, whether or not you make your bed first thing, if you lay out your clothes the night before for work the next day, you repeat something enough and it becomes a habit. Now we have two forms of habits. We have your good habits and we have your bad habits. Some of us are raised with habits. So some of us, say for example, getting up in the morning and getting washed and dressed is probably something that's been ingrained in us from our parents. So a lot of our habits are raised. If we were left alone to develop our own habits, doesn't necessarily mean that we would develop that routine in the morning. So there's a lot of things that we carry through, preferred time for eating and things like that. They all pile on top of one another. So again, you can be raised with habits, but quite often habits are a form that we develop ourselves. Quite often they're a solution to a problem. So for example, you're hungry at a certain time, then you will grab yourself some food and it becomes a habit. And quite often in my clients, I see this when they arrive home from work, pop the kettle on, make themselves a cup of tea, grab a biscuit. You do that a few times because you're quite hungry when you get home from work. And before you know it, autopilot, get home, flick the kettle on, grab yourself a biscuit. So a lot of our habits, as I said, are developed. Prime example, smoking, okay? When anyone has started smoking, they don't like the taste of a cigarette. They just don't like a cigarette. However, because it was cool and hip at the time, we force ourselves to continue to do it. Therefore, it starts becoming a habit. Yes, there is a nicotine addiction in there, but it is disgusting. It is absolutely vile to begin with, but we still continue because we want to develop a habit. And the same can be put in place with all of our lives, okay? And we can make, rather than creating a bad habit, we can create a better habit. And that's what I'm going to cover in the next video. A habit that I have is making my bed in the morning. Why? Purely because when I come home from work, when I want to climb into my bed, it is always better to get into a nicely made bed than appearing and all your covers are ruffled. So that for me is one of my habits in the morning, is literally getting out of bed, making my bed ready. As I said, some evenings, getting your clothes ready for work the next day can be another habit. For us that have got children, making those lunches at a specific time ready for the next day so that things flow freely in the morning for you. So that's another habit that we develop as well. Some of our formed habits can be rewards and not necessarily the right choice of rewards. So another one may be a glass of wine in the evening. And again, a lot of the time they are related to a cue, which we will cover that in a minute. But for example, on your sofa in the evening, what do? You flick on the TV, maybe you grab yourself some chocolate, maybe you get yourself a glass of wine. That moment, and when you sit down on your sofa. Now you do that enough, you do that regularly, and then becomes a cue. You sit down on your sofa and straight away you're thinking of that chocolate, that wine, that snack, or whatever you grab. As I said, it's not necessarily because you need it. It's just a habit that you have formed and it's a habit that you have grown into. So it's not always the right reward choices. takeaway, for example. So a Saturday night takeaway, or again, that Saturday bottle of wine. It could be something that you reward yourself. Saturday night is takeaway. And again, it's becomes a habit that every Saturday night is a takeaway night. It's the night when you open a bottle of beer. It's the night when you open a bottle of wine. It's the night when you order an Indian. Again, it's a reward. You've worked hard all week. So Saturday night, you're going to take that time with the family and you're going to get yourself a takeaway. As I said, it's not necessarily the right choice. Everyone deserves a treat, however. So it's not in any way a bad choice either. The most common reward that I see is food after exercise. And again, with clients, they believe that by exercising, it deserves a reward. And it's not because, we would rather that you enjoy that exercise and you feel raised by that exercise. However, we also see so many people leaving the gym and, okay, we're going to McDonald's now, we've earned it. So again, food can also be related to a reward, specifically after exercise. I don't really see the point in that because quite often you haven't burned as many calories as that McDonald's you're about to go and buy. So you end up in a surplus of calories rather than a minus. However, another one is that chocolate, that bar of chocolate. It's okay, I've worked out today, I deserve it. So I ask, apart from being healthy, if you're looking at weight control or you're looking at weight loss, why would you go out purposely to buy your chocolate to reward yourself for that exercise, for those calories that you've just burned off? You're just going to end up on a parallel plane. A coffee on the way into work as well. So many people I know will swing by, grab a coffee from Costa or Starbucks. And again, that becomes a regular occurrence. As they're on their way to the office, I'm going to nip in, I'm going to grab my coffee. Repeated enough times, it becomes a habit. So you have your differences. You have your differences between your good habits and your bad habits. Now, a good habit, for example, would be to go out for a run every morning. You lay out your gym gear the night before, you wake up in the morning, you see your gym gear, you pop it on and you go for a run. A good habit. Another good habit could be making your bed so that it's ready for the evening. Another one could be savings. So maybe you're popping some money into your savings accounts. So that again is a very good habit to have and seeing that build. But there's a drawback to these good habits because good habits aren't necessarily a reward immediately. And that's where things make the difference. So a lot of good habits have a long-term effect. So you see the effects further in the distance. So for example, exercise. Apart from that buzz, if you're doing it for weight loss, if you're doing it to see definition and tone, that doesn't happen immediately. It happens in the future, as long as you keep that really good habit up. Another one, like making your bed. Making your bed in the morning just makes you feel more organized for the rest of the day. Not initially straight away. However, you repeat that habit and that habit has a knock-on effect of your organisation and you start developing into new ones. Another good habit like the savings, for example, you pop a little bit of money in and you don't put £20 in and all of a sudden see £100 in there the same day. It is a long-term building of savings and they're really good habits to have. Not that you will reap the benefits immediately, but you will definitely reap the benefits in the long term. Moving on to bad habits. They're usually immediate cravings. And again, sometimes a solution to a problem. And you get that reward immediately. So for example, you fancy something sweet, you grab a chocolate bar, you grab a donut, immediately you feel satisfied. Long term, if you were kept putting off that chocolate or that donut, you would see the results not straight away because you'd feel quite frustrated that you haven't, ditched that craving. However, in the long term, you will see the benefits of your weight loss. Another bad habit, for example, smoking. You're feeling stressed, you're feeling run down, you're feeling anxious, and smoking a cigarette is a reward short term. However, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't see a reward until long term, further in the distance, when your health starts picking up from quitting. The sofa eating is another bad habit. Again, it's that immediate reward. It's that habit. It's something that we do all the time. But over the duration of the week, that all adds up to a serious amount of calories, whether or not that be in alcohol, because yes, alcohol does contain calories as well, whether or not it's those crisps or chocolate or popcorn that you might be munching on the sofa. There's an immediate reward, but there is no long-term reward. So again, there's that association. And the difficulty that we have is that we are more likely to indulge in the bad habits, because the bad habits, immediate satisfaction. We're less likely to indulge in the good habits because you don't see an immediate result. So therefore, it is longer in the distance. So it's about changing our mindset. Do we want to go for that immediate reward, or actually, do we want to delay the reward and reap better benefits? A business doesn't happen overnight. If you knocked out a business really, really quickly and very harsh, very quickly, the business would not be as good. However, if you develop a business slowly and precisely over a long period of time, the results and the income would be much greater. Now, it's not just us as people where we develop these habits, because it is us as a society. The whole world has changed. So you think back in the day where we used to have to hunt our food, where we used to have to find our food. The world now has changed. Everything is so much more immediate. We want something, we can have it in an instant. We can nip to the shop. We don't have to go and hunt our food. We don't have to go and forage for our food anymore. So back in the day, way back, when we had a delayed response, now it is immediate. We've only got to nip up to Tesco's or Asda or nip up to the corner shop to get what we want. So everything has become so immediate for us that we don't really have to worry about things. And it's not just about food either. So for example, yes, we can order takeaways. That's relevant for food. What about Amazon? How many of you have paid double the price because you want it delivered the next day? Now that's understandable if you need it for the next day, but how many items have you ordered that actually you probably could have paid half the price and waited a few days or up to a week for it? Was it really that immediate that you wanted it? Another one is research. Prime example. Research is readily available on the internet. We've only got to Google something. But long term, you could have nipped to the library. You could have borrowed a reference book or sat down and studied at the library. Now, the two sides to that is that Google or the internet isn't often our friend. And quite often, there are articles printed that are not entirely the truth. I mean, I give you a prime example. Gin does not promote weight loss. However, there are articles out there on it. But if you'd have gone to a library and actually done the research from studies and from books, you would have had more precise information. Again, it's a delayed gratification, but it's better in the long term. I prefer reading a book for reference over a Kindle. Now, again, if you're reading a novel, maybe slightly different, but every single book or reference book that I have is in paper form. Why? Because I like to read it over and over. I like to put sticky tabs in there so that I know for future reference, if I've forgotten something, want to recap on something, I have it, it's on a bookshelf, and I've only got to find that sticky tab and find exactly what I'm looking for. So again, that's why I prefer the reading over a Kindle. A Kindle is immediate response. If I really wanted to read it there and then, I could get it on the Kindle. However, long-term gains, it's much better for me to have them in paperback. Weight loss. Weight loss is the biggest one of all. So many people just want that weight loss so quickly. They want it overnight. And there are pills out there, as I said, there's magic tricks, there's everything. Quick, harsh diets that would just help us lose that weight a lot quicker. Why? Because we want something immediately. But if we'd have gone for long-term, good nutrition, healthy, balanced food, we see greater results in the long run, rather than almost starvation, doing fasting days and stuff like that, really restricting yourself of food and your treats, or for that quick weight loss that eventually, when we get down to the weight that we want, we are craving everything under the planet. We're craving that chocolate, we're craving that cake, and we are more likely to pile it back on. However, if you'd allowed yourself those treats over a longer weight loss journey, then you get better long-term results. So it's about developing habits that are going to get us better for the long term and not the short term. And again, it's not just us as humans, okay? We're not damaged. There's nothing wrong with us. But there are so many more visual cues out there now. So we look around our house when you get in from work. Is there a biscuit barrel sitting on your side, okay? That is a visual cue. That visual cue, your brain clocks that and you go, okay, I want a biscuit. And it is immediate, so you get an immediate reward from it. Visual cues have a lot to answer for. Advertising. Advertising is one of the biggest things going. You see that advert for the Big Mac on the TV, visual cue, what do you want? You want that Big Mac. You see something amazing, you're scrolling through Facebook, an Amazon list or Wish, okay? Wish, advertising things that you don't even want, but all of a sudden there is a visual cue and you think, oh, I could do with one of those. You've never thought about it. It probably isn't practical in your life. It's probably something that you're going to buy, maybe use once and never use again, but advertising relies on a lot of visual cues. And when we get a visual cue, it prompts us. Then we want it, okay? And then when we get it, that is our reward. Or sometimes even just ordering is our reward. That gratification that we've just hit the buy button and we know that it's going to be on its way. Again, relating it to food, Gogglebox on the TV. I used to love watching Gogglebox. And there is a family on there, and if you have watched it, you probably know what I mean. And on their coffee table, sitting in front, they would have a plate full of donuts or a plate full of just cakes or a plate full of biscuits, a plate full of chocolates. It was amazing what they had on their coffee table. Each episode, they generally had something different. Now, for me at home, seeing that on their table was a visual cue. And I don't know how a family can live with that visual cue sitting in the middle of their living room, because you're more likely to go for it. When you walk into the kitchen and you see a donut on the side, you don't say, no, it's all right. Straight away, that visual cue, you just want that as a reward. So seeing that on their coffee table while you're sitting down on the sofa, that was a visual cue for me. And it urged me to want to go and get myself something sweet to indulge in. And finally, for developing habits, we also have mood cues. Now, again, we can have negative mood cues and we can have positive mood cues. So again, when we're feeling stressed, anxious, some of us reach for food. Some of us may have a habit for like smoking. There are many, many habits that relate to our mood and what we do because we are stressed or run down. And again, you need to have a look at those habits and think of how we can change into positive ones. Because let's face it, anyone that is feeling low, anyone that is feeling stressed, anyone that is feeling depressed and goes for food, quite often they then beat themselves up because although they've had that initial reward, they then feel bad for eating that food in the first place. So it doesn't necessarily lift their mood, it actually deepens the mood. Another one, which is a great one as an example for cues and visual cues and mood cues, is a celebration. We have a birthday. What do we buy? We buy cake. We celebrating something. We grab a bottle of wine. If something amazing has happened, we wet the baby's head, for example, someone's birthday, an anniversary, someone's just passed a test. Anything like that, graduation, the bottle of wine, a treat, a cake. So they're not all necessarily depressive mood cues. They can also be celebratory mood cues. But all of these can add up. So it depends how many times are you going to be celebrating a birthday in 1 month? How many little excuses can we make for a celebration? So I see that quite a lot. Well, I'm celebrating because I've completed a page of work today. Ching, ching, here's my glass of wine. So again, we then start relying on some of these mood cues that develop those habits moving forward. So finally, just to finish this very brief cover on habits, all habits to lead to a long-term behavioural change. So identify some of those habits that you may have in your life, because long term, the more we develop on those habits, the longer we use those habits, the harder they are to break. So we do need to break them down. We need to reverse them, or not necessarily eradicate some bad habits, replace them with good habits, or build good habits on top of those bad habits so that some of those bad habits can be cancelled out. So on the next video, we're going to break down how we can build on habits, how possibly we can change habits, how we can build on the bad habits and incorporate some good habits to cancel some of the bad ones out. Well, I hope this video has helped you, and I hope it will help you move a little bit forward. And I hope it will help you distinguish where some of the changes that you may need to make in your life. Because as I said, we're just human, but we develop habits. Our brains are powerful, more powerful than any other species. And that is why this happens. But it doesn't mean that you can't make the change.